fantastic location we've got for our ITV studio as well. We overlook the start and the finish straight. It's got to be the closest we have ever been to the track. Hello there. It's dry, it's overcast, temperature around about 19 degrees. The wind is blowing a bit. That's par for the course around here. Joining me in the studio alongside Tony Jardine is Eddie Jordan, a man who's had to make some very tough decisions this week. Eddie, welcome. Before we talk, let's just bring everybody right up to speed with what has been going on. Formula One really feeling the financial pinch, especially the smaller non-manufacturer teams. Jordan sacking around about 40 people this week. This report from Ted Kravitz.
And Jordan and Heinz Harald Frentzen win in France. Magnificent.
From the top step of the podium 3 years ago to bottom of the pile today, Jordan's pointless season continued at Imola. While the drivers have been going off the road, it's been the end of the road for many people who build and run the cars back at the Silverstone factory. This week, Jordan made sweeping redundancies, over 40 staff out of a job. Amongst the casualties, Trevor Foster, managing director, Tim Holloway, who was the team's head of engineering, and the highly rated race engineer David Brown. Many of those sacked had been with Jordan from the very beginning, experienced and loyal people. All in all, a 15% reduction in staff.
It's always a blow, no matter who you lose. It's about, the financial climate, what we're doing, how we're doing it, trying to sort of streamline and regroup, I suppose. It's very easy to grow too big too quickly and not have a management structure that copes with it. Our management structure sort of was a bit top heavy, so it's been weeded out as well. And every one that's lost will be a loss to the company. But we've got what we've got now, and there's a lot of enthusiastic people left in the factory and raring to go.
The changes won't help Jordan convince their engine supplier Honda that they should favour them over their other team, British American Racing. At the moment, the Jordan is a quicker car, but BAR may be better placed to land an exclusive engine supply. They even have Honda engineers working on their chassis.
Yes, that's a great benefit to us as well, and I don't think we've been making maximum use of that. We need to really close that loop even better. We need to have better communication with their facilities in Japan and have their engineers based with us more. All these things are under discussion. I'm sure over the next 12 months you'll see that coming closer and closer.
Okay, Eddie, how hard has it been for you getting rid of those people?
Well, there's two very different issues here. That was probably one of the most difficult decisions, and you've highlighted particularly Tim and Trevor there, and they have probably been some of the loyalist, if you could imagine, the strongest supporters for Jordan, but the way their contracts were structured, and a little bit like what Gary has just said, that the environment, the whole situation has changed, and I had to take a very, very pragmatic look at the situation, where it's best for Jordan and its future. And I couldn't help think that, you talked about winning there as well. It seems a long time ago, but it actually only is 2 years ago. And so things change dramatically in this business, or in sport, or in general business everywhere, changing very quickly. And I needed to get back to that, and I felt as if my hands in the managerial side had been almost taken away from me, because we felt we could become a Ferrari or a McLaren very quickly, and that wasn't possible.
How is your own role going to change then?
Well, in a way, back to where we started from. We won races with less people than what we have at the moment, and we fought for a championship a couple of years ago. And I feel that I need to get back, I need to be able to do the things. And of course, when you get very grandiose ideas and you think that there is enough money to bring in a huge new level of management structure and consultants and whatnot, but at the end of the day, people who know motor racing are the best people to sort this out.
How do you feel that just down the paddock, McLaren have opened an opulent new motorhome and are employing just about the same amount of people as you've had to get rid of?
What, to run it? Yeah, okay. But look, that's their business. They are in a totally different environment to us. They are part owned by Mercedes-Benz, and if Mercedes-Benz can't afford it, then I don't know many people who can. And I don't envy those people. I support that Formula One is by far, for me, the greatest sport in the world. So therefore, we have to be prudent. I want to be around to enjoy it. I want to make sure that Jordan is there in the long haul. And I've made difficult decisions now which will ensure that that does happen. And I've also made sure that it gives us the best chance of success as quickly as possible.
Just listening to Dave Richards at British American Racing there, they seem pretty confident they will get sole use of that Honda engine next season.
Well, there are contractual rights which says that that may not happen, because we do have a contract with Honda for next year. There seems to be a lot of talk in the media linking what happened with Williams in the past may happen to Jordan, whereby Honda took their engine away from them. I have no reason necessarily to believe that, but who knows?
Okay, and just finally, Eddie, a lot of people will be watching this and say, Formula One pleading poverty, is he sure?
Look, come on, this is a situation that is not just a Formula One problem. We have to look at football, tennis, golf, every sport in the world. And the great thing about our business is that it is totally global. That we have 2 new sponsors here. Of course, Formula One is the most sought after business in sport. So it's not all doom and gloom, but we want to be sure that Jordan is going back to its roots where it can get its best success and be here for the long haul.
We appreciate you joining us. Thanks very much indeed, Eddie. Some more problems for Jordan, as if they needed them. Taku Sato, their Japanese driver this morning in the wars.
He only got 2 yards out of the pit lane yesterday and the car stopped. And today the poor little Japanese driver, who was perfectly all right, you can see him on the left of the shot there, went off again, and he's having a dismal start to the season. It's not good for him to learn about Formula One. He spent more time off the track than he has on it.
The Bridgestone tyres seem to be working exceptionally well around this circuit, and Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber getting in between the Ferraris this morning.
Well, you say Ferrari, it has a Ferrari engine, it has rear-end components from the Ferrari, and it also puts paid to the comments from Giancarlo Fisichella in the other Jordan, who runs the Bridgestone tyres. He said they're just for Ferrari and they don't suit our car. Well, he's showing the Bridgestones work perfectly well on the Sauber.
Good, Tony, thank you very much. Okay, it is email time now, and we have scrutinised the ITV F1 website and come up with the best question. And today's question comes from Nick Lane of Gillingham in Kent. Ferrari's Ross Brawn said some Michelin runners scrub their race tyres during Friday sessions. Is this against the spirit of the regulations? Martin Brundle has the answer.
Good question, Nick. I've not actually heard Ross Brawn say that, but what your question refers to is the fact that wherever possible, the Bridgestone runners tend to use brand new tyres, whereas the Michelin-shod cars put a few laps on them before they need them in the heat of the Grand Prix. Why is that? Well, Michelin find that the performance of their tyre dips away after 2 or 3 laps and comes back sometime later, so they want to get that sector of the tyre use out of the way. Is it against the spirit of the regulations? No such thing. It's either legal or it's illegal, and the way that they do it to get the best use of their tyres is definitely legal. You're allowed 40 dry tyres for a Grand Prix weekend. 12 of them on Friday with 2 different compounds that are then discarded, so no point scrubbing them until Saturday. You've got a further 28 dry tyres then for free practice, qualifying, the warm-up and the Grand Prix itself.
And Martin's going to drive around the circuit when you rejoin us in Spain, and we examine the latest technology from the pit lane to the car. Are we approaching the era when the driver is no longer in control? We'll be right back. That's close to Barcelona, counting down towards the start of qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix. This is a very popular race weekend for British fans. They found a remodelled circuit with enlarged grandstands. They're doing their best to attract more Spaniards here for the Formula One experience. And there's also a brand new lofty home for our commentators.
So let's have a look at this cracking Barcelona Grand Prix racetrack. What better place to start than our new commentary box up here in the gods of a 10,000-seater grandstand. It's very, very nice. Murray will not be too pleased. And I've got a super view of the grid.
And here is the grid, but it's a long way down to turn 1, over the hill and far away, but it's very exciting when you get there. A great overtaking opportunity. Let's take a closer look.
On board with a future megastar in Formula One, no doubt about it, Kimi Raikkonen in the McLaren doing a tickle over 190 miles an hour as he heads down to turn 1. Brake very late, loads of grip, 75 miles an hour, touch the curb on the inside, 2's in front of you, let the car run wide, and the never-ending right-hander of turn 3. 150 miles an hour over the top. Look for the white line on the left-hand side and be sure not to go over it. 170 into turn 4. Sweep in early. It's very bumpy. Watch him turn into the slide as he gets on the throttle. Bring it immediately to the right for a downhill braking zone into turn 5. A hairpin, 55 miles an hour. Waiting forever to get on the throttle. Now he's away. Doesn't shift the gears. It's all automatic as he heads into 6. A third gear, 75 miles an hour corner. flick right up the hill towards Campsa. A tremendous corner, 125 through the middle. It's tight on the exit. Bring it gently to the right-hand side then. A decent straight down to La Caxa, 180, down to just 50 miles an hour. And it keeps turning left on you. So difficult to get the power into the racetrack, but you still reach 130 miles an hour before turning into Bank Sabadell. Look at the young Finn really fighting that car, like so many other drivers in the early running, not at all well hooked up.
But what is it about this racetrack that makes some of the teams struggle? Ferrari tend to do well here. Quite often, Williams have not been on the pace. It's about the high-speed corners. Usually, you could put the graphs up of the engine power output and the downforce levels of the car and predict the result. It's a little bit different here. It's not just the speed of those corners, though. It's the fact that they're very, very long. Here we are towards the end of the lap. Turn 12 up the hill behind me. Turn 13 ahead. Best part of half a mile of constant action, where the tyre temperatures are constantly building up and the car is working hard. But as a driver, you cannot drive around difficult problems here. There's no room for error. It's got to be absolutely stuck underneath you, or you're getting off the throttle and then losing more time down the next straight. Even the pit lane here in Barcelona is a big challenge. They're going through that gap in the wall there at nearly 150 miles an hour. The speed limit zone is not until a few hundred meters further along. But if you get it right, 155 on the way in, 135 miles an hour right there on the apex of the corner. It's a wonderful feeling of achievement as you head into that pit straight.
Let's drive those two corners. Turn 12 ahead of you. A slight lift of the throttle for confidence. Hammer down towards 13. Watch the turn in. Incredibly positive. And away he goes. We've been coming here for over a decade, but every lap is still a great thrill.
McLaren have got a good record in Spain. Kimi Raikkonen, 7th quickest this morning. Well, we know by now that every aspect of a Formula One car is monitored from the garage. Now the level of that remote control has been increased by two-way telemetry.
Telemetry is a vital tool for a Formula One team. But what exactly is it, and why is it so crucial to the modern-day sport? Well, here's a man who can hopefully give us some of the answers. Dave Stubbs is team manager for the Jaguar team. Dave, tell me, define telemetry.
Telemetry is a way of receiving and sending information to the car. There are certain parameters on the car, like temperatures and pressures, that we need to monitor during practice and throughout the race. And telemetry gives us that information back in the pits. We're receiving information from the engine, from the gearbox, from the clutch. We're monitoring hydraulic pressure, oil pressure. We've got sensors all over the car.
There are around 500 sensors in total collecting data from the car and engine. That data is sent back to the garage via a radio signal in two different ways. Real-time transmission enables the technicians to constantly monitor functions like engine temperature and oil pressure. At the end of each lap, a further burst of more complex data relating to areas such as suspension and gearbox performance is downloaded from the car. The engineers will use this information to help them understand exactly what the car and engine are doing and thereby fine-tune different aspects of their performance. Up until recently, data could only be sent from car to pits, but this season has seen the introduction of two-way telemetry.
This is a very good example of two-way telemetry system functioning properly. This is from Brazil. At this point, we found that there's a problem with oil level. By using the two-way telemetry, we switched on the oil pump system here. And as you can see, the level was low beforehand, and now eventually it goes up. And then by this time, the oil level is now saturated, and excess oil just popped out from the back of the engine.
If we're bringing the driver in for a pit stop, we used to call him on the radio and tell him to come in, but we could never actually be sure that he'd heard the message because of the wind noise. You know, when a driver's going around the track at 180 miles an hour, he's got the engine noise and the wind noise, and it's very difficult to hear on the radio. But we can now send a message which comes up on his dash which says box, box. So he actually sees that on his dash. We'll get a pit confirmed signal come back to us, and we know he's seen the signal and he's coming into the pits on the next lap.
In theory, could two-way telemetry do away with drivers? Could you drive the car from the pits?
Let's hope not.
Cost him a few quid if it did, wouldn't it? But robots in the cars, Tony?
No, far from it. They have to be very, very intelligent because there's so many different parameters. First of all, the telemetry sometimes doesn't cover all the circuit, so they couldn't do it all the time remote. At Imola, for example, part of the circuit, they couldn't get the microwave system through. But it's very important that the engineer tells the driver he's going to change something, like altering his diff, opening it up or stiffening it up. Because if he just makes a sudden change, the driver could go flying to that corner, the diff stiffens up, and off he goes off the road. And the driver likes to adjust the traction control himself, loosen it off or tighten it up. So he's in control of a lot of parameters, but he has a lot of thinking to do.
Just explain that to me, altering the diff.
Well, for different corners, faster corners or slower corners, they'll make the diff either stiffer and tighter, or to loosen it off, or like with the traction control, which reduces wheel spin at the back. They can reduce it, or they can, you know, loosen it off.
Okay, Tony, thank you. Well, we all try and avoid the traffic, don't we? You think F1's any different? Watch this from Ted Kravitz.
Another clever bit of telemetry is this device from McLaren. It's their very elegant way of trying to avoid traffic while on qualifying runs. Now, what it is a virtual circuit. It shows in real time where each driver is on the lap. Now, team manager Dave Ryan sits here and tells the drivers when they can go out and when they're coming across slower cars. It's a very clever device, and it means that the drivers should avoid slower cars during qualifying.
And the screens went blank behind him. Montoya before Schumacher. Now Juan Pablo Montoya, and looking for points. In fact, that whole Williams team will be looking for points this afternoon, but now it is time for qualifying, looking to get the best places on the grid. Michael Schumacher going for his third success. Right. I'm sure Eddie'd be very pleased to see that. Third successive pole in Spain. Only Ayrton Senna can match that record. There is a theory that Williams have been keeping something in reserve. I'm sure that Eddie will be pleased. The whole of the world saw that little sign. Let us join Martin Brundle. I can let you into a little secret, actually. Martin had dinner with the King of Spain last night, and he's alongside our man of the people, James Allen.
Yeah, and I can tell you that Martin's still wearing his glass slippers right now. As long as he doesn't ask me to call him Your Honour, I don't mind too much. Marquis of Marbella, I believe he is now. Anyway, the qualifying hour, thrilling in Imola 2 weeks ago, and every chance we're going to have the same today. Also the chance of some real upsets as well. Bridgestone definitely have the upper hand here, and that's opened the door to teams like Sauber and Arrows and British American Racing to get in amongst the big boys this afternoon. This morning, as Jim was saying, Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber second fastest, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Arrows sixth fastest, and Felipe Massa eighth. Incidentally, I heard a little whisper this afternoon that Sauber have a special qualifying engine from Ferrari just for this session, so keep an eye out for Heidfeld and Massa. They may well be mixing it with some of the big names. Michelin teams, though, well, they're struggling. Williams have been outside the top 10 pretty much all weekend. McLaren and Renault, they're doing a little bit better, and there should be a great battle between those two teams this afternoon, especially David Coulthard and Jenson Button. Michael Schumacher, well, he says he's highly optimistic, which is a bit like Sven-Göran Eriksson saying he quite likes the ladies. Ferrari here are in a different league. But as in Imola, Schumacher has to worry about his teammate, Rubens Barrichello. He was fastest this morning, and he's looking like he's really challenging Shui, isn't he, Your Honour?
He certainly is. Barrichello beating last year's pole position time, the outright qualifying record around here, by a couple of tenths. It's like Imola, very close, it seems, through the free practice. We wonder if they can smash those times as they go into the heat of qualifying itself. But Barrichello definitely feeling happy, says, since I had my child and since I've settled down at Ferrari, I'm driving better. And it certainly looks that way, doesn't it? But you're right about Sauber, they've been very strong. I wonder if Ferrari were thinking, Williams are not strong around. We know Williams are not strong around here after all the pre-season testing, and it might be helpful to be sure Saubers are between us and the McLarens. Maybe that's in their thinking, we don't know. What is bizarre is that despite thousands and thousands of laps of testing of the various Michelin runners, Michelin have bought a tyre here that hasn't been tested. They tried it at Silverstone last week, it flew there, but it hasn't ever been around this racetrack, and it's not working, and it seems as if the Michelin runners can't really get one good hot lap out of them.
You were saying in your track guide that these long corners here really take a lot of strain out of the tyres, but the track surface is also very abrasive, isn't it? So it's a real thrashing the tyres take. And obviously the tendency, I'm led to believe, is to bring a hard enough tyre to be able to withstand that. And the suggestion is that Williams are going to have to deal with a Michelin which is just a bit too hard this weekend. There you see Juan Montoya, a moment ago Ralf Schumacher. Montoya 14th fastest this morning. I mean, he's managing to smile about it, but yesterday afternoon he was just saying the car is literally quite all over the place. Understeer, oversteer, it's just a real handful.
Yeah, that's when you've got that combination, it's really difficult to know what to do. If you've got some understeer and some oversteer, you're really scuppered. What do you do to change that? Sometimes it can be a mechanical understeer where you can soften off the front suspension or change the geometry or whatever, and an aerodynamic oversteer at high speed where the balance and you have more grip at the front because the front wing's working better or whatever, or the under tray is moving the centre of pressure forwards. You can address that, but it's a scrappy weekend. And as I said, they've been round here thousands of times. There's more testing at this track than anywhere else in the world, and they must be so frustrated to come out and be slightly off the pace, and also really not even delivering what they have done in practice, in testing, I should say.
There's Nick Heidfeld. Watch out for him this afternoon. A very promising driver in the Sauber, and remember, he has got, I believe, that special qualifying engine. There's also the suggestion, something that Tony picked up on earlier in the programme, that it's in Ferrari's interest also to have other Bridgestone runners up the front of the field to give the impression these tyres are not just tailor-made specifically for the Ferrari chassis. They work on other cars as well, and I think there's a little bit of that in the background of this decision to put a special lump in the back of the Sauber.
Yes, and when we say tailor-made, it's not just the rubber, of course, it's the construction of the tyre, the way the bands are put together, and the whole philosophy of the tyre itself. Louise is down in the pits with Gerhard Berger.
I am indeed, Martin. Gerhard, we've just been talking about the fact that Williams just don't seem to be able to get the performance out of the car this weekend. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's a difficult circuit for us, no question. We're a little bit struggling, but on the same time, I would say we haven't showed everything we have. So we're going to improve now in the afternoon, but how much we can improve is still quite open. I think no way to compete with Ferrari here. But the goal would be to be the best Michelin team. You say you haven't showed everything. What do you mean? What have you been hiding? Well, we have concentrated very much on the race setup, and we were simulating the race a lot, and it wasn't time enough for us really to show our qualifying performance. But we're going to do this afternoon. I understand there are a few modifications to your BMW engine for this weekend. Are these things that were due to come online at this race anyway? Yes, I mean, nearly every race that we have some modifications, sometimes a bit smaller, sometimes a bit bigger, but we have some aerodynamic improvements, some engine performance improvements. We have also different tires here, and normal development. Thanks, Gerhard.
What Gerhard was referring to, really, without actually saying it, is they're running more fuel at all times, and I think it's fairly well established that Williams do tend to run more fuel. They want to more realistically perform as they will be in the race with the fuel loads, and every 10 kilos of fuel around here, say 4 laps worth, cost them 4/10 of a second. It really is a very high rate here per 10 kilos, and again I think it's because of the characteristics of the circuit and those long corners.
Look down there at the Ferrari garage, and after Imola was quite a lot of talk about Ferrari running aerodynamic devices on the car, barge boards and floors, etc., which other teams, McLaren and Williams, thought perhaps had some flexibility in them. There is quite a specific rule that says you're not allowed to have any kind of movable aerodynamic device. McLaren was saying they felt that the barge boards on the Ferrari were moving by as much as 40 millimeters when they were out on the track. Interestingly, though, this weekend, I don't know about you, but I've heard nothing about that this weekend. It's all gone quiet.
I think that's just tactics that we see a lot in Formula One, where really, if you throw enough mud, some of it may stick, and anything you can do to destabilise your competitor, you're obliged to do, frankly, because that's the nature of the sport. It's a driver v driver, and also it's very much team versus team.
Ross Brawn, the team technical director at Ferrari, was a bit disappointed by that, what happened in Imola. Said afterwards he felt that whenever Ferrari do well, everybody seems to want to find some suspicious reason for it. Certainly the FIA scrutineers checked the car very thoroughly. They couldn't find anything in Imola. Gave the car a clean bill of health. And as I say, it's all gone very quiet on that subject here this weekend. Now look at, you see on the top, on the left-hand side of your screen, That's the grandstand. We're at the very top of it, looking down a terrific view of half of this wonderful racetrack. It's a funny place, this. It's about 25, 30 miles outside Barcelona to the east, northeast, and it's an industrial estate we're in, really. It's a bit like sort of Milton Keynes with dust where we are. It's a very, very dusty area. The area is full of bits of smog, and there's a lot of heavy industry around here, but a tremendous racetrack. I mean, just look at the quality of that architecture and the construction of everything. Many circuits around the world would be envious of that.
Yeah, it is a good circuit. I haven't seen any concrete cows around, but what's amazing here in Spain is there's a big motorbike tradition, really. They have a fantastic support for motorbikes. What I didn't realise until yesterday, only about 1 million people watch Formula One here in Spain on TV, and it's more of a national TV, it's a regional TV, rather than going out nationally as we do in the UK. And despite having 2 Grand Prix drivers around, like Fernando Alonso, who's the test driver for Renault, and of course De La Rosa, one of the key drivers at Jaguar, they're really struggling to make Formula One a big sport in Spain. But lots of support here. We're going to take a short break.
Forty 48 minutes left of this qualifying session, yet to see the first car come out. There we are, you see up in our eyrie, looking down over this wonderful grandstand, 14,000 people sit down there. And that's the BAR garage. A promising weekend so far for them. Olivier Panis, 9th fastest this morning. And off the back of Jacques Villeneuve's strong performance in Imola 2 weeks ago, signs of green shoots of recovery at BAR, I would say.
I think there's a calm confidence in that team. I think Dave Richards feels he's getting a grip of which way he needs to go. And I have to say, I'm quite impressed with the way they're approaching it, the realistic nature. And I agree with you, some green shoots there, no doubt about it. They'll be, I think, leaning heavily on Honda to try to come their way for the future. Certainly I would if I was in their position. Ted is down in the pits.
Martin, you were talking about how Michelin is struggling here at the Circuit de Catalunya. I can tell you that a lot of their problem is actually getting a full quick lap out of their new tyres. Now they're okay just on the first 2 sectors of this lap, but by the last sector they start to tail off. Now our best information is that the Bridgestones are between 1/2 and 3/4 of a second quicker than the Michelins. And Martin, I'm sure you'll agree that's a huge amount to give away.
Well, a Formula One car travels an awful long way in 1/2 a second when you're doing best part of 200 miles an hour, and it is night and day in this sport. And I agree with you entirely, Ted. I think if the Michelin runners hook up a great and complete lap, they may be within 2 or 3 tenths, but no doubt about it, the Bridgestone runners have got a slightly faster tyre and a better chance of hooking up the perfect lap as Jarno Trulli takes to the racetrack. He's had a pretty lacklustre weekend, hasn't he, James? Jenson Button, 5th this morning, absolutely flying for Renault again. He really has got the bit between his teeth, hasn't he? But Trulli seems to be suffering with that confidence of Button's.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Button's had 3 consecutive solid points finishes. Imola 2 weeks ago, he described as his best Grand Prix ever. He really had to attack. He got ahead of David Coulthard. And you've just seen with Trulli that the pace has been there through practice and qualifying, generally speaking, but he's just not had the luck in the race. He's not been on the pace of Jenson Button. And the thing with Jarno Trulli you saw through his Jordan years was sometimes he would just get his head down a little bit, and if he wasn't able to lift it back up again, he'd just go further and further and further. He's a very intense young man and slightly depressive, I would say. He goes in on himself. Button, though, seems to be just getting stronger and stronger in his character and his mentality. He's back in demand again now. His other teams coming, knocking on his door, asking if he wants to come to them for next year. BAR interested, I understand. Jaguar interested. And I'm sure Frank Williams is keeping an eye on him as well. So, yes, terrific pressure on Trulli.
Yeah, big story this week about Button going to Ferrari, which was slightly ahead of the game, I would imagine. But it's great to read that sort of thing when you're a driver, because all last year Button would have seen headlines of what's gone wrong, you know, the wheels have come off the wagon and all that sort of thing. But let's see what his teammate Jarno Trulli can do as he heads through turns 1 and 2.
Well, they've got a step on the engine here, small step from the engine, more power, more development. They've also got a new front wing on this Renault, so constantly this car improving at the moment. 23.164, that's about 0.3 of a second off the kind of pace you'll see from Michael Schumacher at the front row. A bit of a lock-up there from Jarno Trulli as he went into the left-hander at turn 5. Picking up the speed, though, down into 140 miles an hour as he goes through turn 6 and up to 7 and 8. The right-hand flick-flack. Up the hill then, into the 125 mile an hour Campsa corner, and then down the long back straight. Jarno Trulli on the attack, 54.703. About 0.6 off the pole-setting pace of this morning, but not a bad lap from Jarno Trulli for a first outing. Through 12. Fantastic corner that Martin was talking about in his track guide, down into the final corner, and the speed they carry through here is absolutely mesmerising when you stand on the outside of the track and watch it. Across the line in a 19.168, which compared to his time from this morning is quite substantially faster, 1.3 seconds faster than he managed this morning. Not a bad first lap from Jarno Trulli.
Probably his fastest ever lap around this racetrack, if truth be known, in qualifying conditions. So Trulli will be I think moderately satisfied with that. Jenson Button, though, in the same car, full 0.7 of a second faster than that this very morning. Louise is in the pits.
Yeah, I actually went to see Jarno's engineer after the session this morning to say, you know, what is the problem with Jarno? As you say, he was 2 seconds off Jenson's pace this morning. That's a massive difference. There's no obvious reason for it. The two drivers run a very similar setup. They've got the same tyres. So no obvious reason why he should be so much off Jenson's pace. He's actually out in the T car this afternoon. The suggestion being that perhaps there's some inherent problem in the chassis of his race car that they can't find. And it does seem to have given him some improvement.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a psychological thing, but although the chassis I mean, they're hand-built, but they're supposed to be identical, you do sometimes get one that suits a circuit much better than another, and then next time you go out, it swaps around, but quite clearly, truly much happier in that spare car. The second driver of the afternoon that we've seen then, that sounds like it's got its pit lane limiter stuck on, does that Minardi of we've got Young and Webber out there now, and Bernoldi too. So 17 minutes gone of this session, and we're seeing the second of 4 cars. I think he'll have to come in the pits. It sounds like the pit lane limiter's stuck or some other kind of gremlin. Yes, indeed, Young takes straight to the pit lane.
Very unfortunate for Alex Young, because he didn't qualify in Imola 2 weeks ago, outside the 107% time. That was very embarrassing for him. And the team have had a few gremlins today, it's fair to say. Mark Webber had a problem. There is Webber. He had a problem this morning, which is something I have not seen before. Going down the main straight in the European Minardi, the front wing literally collapsed, fell off, went right underneath the front wheels. The car took off over the front wing. I was standing talking to one of the Renault engineers in the pit lane, and there's this huge cloud of shards of black carbon fibre just went right over the top of us. They had to stop the session to clear up the bits, but a very worrying incident for Mark Webber. He would have been doing about 170 miles an hour when his front wing fell off. And here is Webber.
There's 3 terrifying things that can happen to you in a Formula 1 car. Throttle stuck wide open, total brake failure, highly unusual, and your front wing falling off, because you're guaranteed to run over it, which is going to start the accident off. The balance has obviously gone to pot with the aerodynamics, and then you've got less meat in front of you when you do finally hit something hard. And it really is, as you said, I haven't seen that in the normal conditions. Roland Ratzenberger, of course, died back in 1994 at Imola when we think the front wing came adrift. It's a very, very serious issue when a front, or indeed a rear wing, falls off.
Webber, 1.1 seconds so far behind Jarno Trulli this morning. He was 19th fastest on a 120.963. So can he do as Jarno Trulli has done so far and make a big improvement? Watch the car just twitching into turn 12 and again into 13. Highly rated driver, Mark Webber. Done a super job so far in his opening season of Formula 1. A 120.861. It's slightly slower than his time from this morning. Here's the first sight, though, of an Arrows. These guys are fast round here. Well, they have been so far, Benoldi goes fastest then, a 1:19.026. But we've seen both Benoldi and Frentzen really on it this weekend. A real turnaround from Arrows, new front wing, step on the engine from Cosworth to a little bit more power, and they're making good use of it around Montmello.
And on the Bridgestones too, which we've already established are the better tyre to have here this weekend, certainly for qualifying pace anyway. And that's a quarter of a second faster than he went this morning, and a good first run for Benoldi. Some lovely, lovely detail around the front of that car. It's almost like a Venturi tunnel that we used to have at the back of a Grand Prix car that starts from just underneath the nose. Very, very nice detail.
Yes, Mike Coughlin is the technical director at the Orange Arrows team, but Sergio Rinland, significantly, who designed last year's Sauber, he's gone there, joined just before Christmas, and obviously making his presence felt already. Amazing, really, when you consider Arrows have only had one test so far this season.
Yeah, presumably if Arrows can generate some more downforce from underneath the nose, they can reduce the wing angle, get better cooling. You don't need such big radiators, you get less drag from the side pods. It all has a knock-on effect from the very tip of the nose back, and it's a crucial area of the aerodynamics.
As Takuma Sato gets third in the Jordan, we've got an update on Minardi from Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, I can tell you that it was an engine misfire for Alex Young. He's now back in the pits, and they're just resetting the computer, starting it up again, and they think it should be okay. About Mark Webber this morning, James, I can tell you that the front wing that failed was actually a new design. They'd brought it to this race, wanted to run it, but obviously it's not working that well, and they've withdrawn them all from service, as it were, and they're running with the old front wing now.
Yes, that's the problem when you do your testing in the public domain, really, of a free practice session of a Grand Prix. Of course, if they ban a lot of testing in the future, that's the one downside, in my view, is the safety aspects. Every car's a prototype at all times. They've always just been put back together, often with development parts on them. But we see a lot of crashes over the winter where teams are trying new ideas and new parts, and if that was a brand new part this morning, then it's not unusual to see it fail.
On board with Pedro de la Rosa in the Jaguar, the Spanish driver from this city, from Barcelona, who made his debut for the Jaguar team 12 months ago at this race. And we start a flying lap of this remarkable racetrack, just under a whisker under 3 miles round, and we'll be doing it in around about a minute and 20 seconds. Into turn 1, 2, up the hill, much steeper than it looks on television. Into 3, and this corner goes on forever. Not been able to attack the circuit the way the Jaguar drivers would have liked. Both the Michelin tyres not really working for them. The aerodynamics on this car still not where they really want them. Down the gears, into the left-hander. Turn 5. Down the short chute. Into 7, then flick right into 8. Up over the curbs, up the hill. And then the fast right-hander at Camps, 125 miles an hour on the apex, and you're onto the back straight away. Up through the gears to 180 miles an hour before hitting the brakes. Into the left-hander, 50 miles an hour as De La Rosa runs slightly wide. And then we're in the final part of the lap now. Turn 11. You can hear how long he had to delay on the throttle. And 12. And we take the overhead shot of De La Rosa as he completes his flying lap. The target, 1 minute 19.026. He'll be doing well if he gets close to it. A 19.4. Not a bad effort from De La Rosa for a first lap.
It's good. We've got 2 faster men on the racetrack, though. Felipe Massa in the Sauber will be the first of them round, and he will take provisional pole position, providing he makes no mistakes in the final sector of the lap. And Kimi Raikkonen in the McLaren is also on track and going fast. Here then is Massa into the final turn. This, I think, will comfortably take provisional pole. Yes, indeed it does. A 118.3. That's a very, very quick lap. What can Raikkonen do behind him?
Well, Raikkonen certainly attacking fastest in the first sector. His middle sector's been pretty tidy as well.
Middle sector, I think, for Raikkonen's a mile out, actually, James. It's a 35-second, and he's pitted. Raikkonen's caught traffic or made a mistake in the middle part of the lap.
Absolutely right. Beg your pardon. 4 seconds is middle sector. I misread the screen. Yes, Kimi Raikkonen had some sort of problem there in sector 2 for the McLaren, and he's come into the pits to get it checked out. Heidfeld going quickly, though. His middle sector is quick. A 31. It's the fastest one we've seen so far. There is Nick Heidfeld, and he goes fastest. 118.198. Well, we told you to watch out for Sauber, didn't we? They're certainly paying off at the moment.
Well, that's faster than last year's pole. That's a new qualifying record. So we have to be looking at something in the 1 minute 17s for the Ferraris.
Well, Rubens Barrichello, interestingly, this morning said he reckoned that the car was capable of a low 1 minute 17, the Ferrari. He reckons it's probably the only car that's capable of that, and I don't think we disagree with that, would we? He also said something very interesting, which it's not so much important to beat Michael Schumacher. I've just got to challenge him. In Imola, he did it 2 weeks ago, and we'll be watching to see whether he can do it here this afternoon. But here's David Coulthard, and he's faster than Heidfeld in the first sector.
Yes, he is. He's not fast as overall, but fast enough. At the moment, Massa got that best sector one, but it's the 31-second middle sector where it's all won and lost around here. And a bit of traffic ahead. Coulthard still fighting the back end of that McLaren a little bit, but traffic moves nicely out of the way and did not touch the grass on the outside there. Looked like he used all the curb and nothing more. Wow, he really is using every ounce of racetrack. That was very Hakkinen-like when he swept in from the white line there. Coulthard really nicely hooked up then through turn 11. Just 12 and 13 to go. We can't hear the throttle, unfortunately. Would be interesting to know how committed he was able to be through there. Oh, a little skip over the curb. This, I think, will go fastest. Yes, it does. An 18 flat. A good run for Coulthard.
A very aggressive qualifying run, a very aggressive opening lap from David Coulthard. You could see the vibration in his hands as he was going up over the curbs, over the rumble strips. He's really, really attacking this afternoon. Wants to go as well as he possibly can and get as close as he can to the Ferraris. And also keep Jenson Button and the Renault behind him, because they've certainly been breathing down Coulthard and McLaren's neck recently. Our first sight of a Williams on track, it's Ralf Schumacher. And he also winding up to start a qualifying lap. Williams not managed to make it into the top 10 at all in any of the sessions so far this weekend. It's a very unusual situation for this season, but they really aren't at the races so far. We heard Gerhard Berger, though, telling Louise a little while ago that they hadn't shown their hand yet. So what have they got up their sleeve?
Well, we know they're going to be on absolute minimum fuel load, and look at that. He's best part of 0.2 of a second faster than anybody else in the first sector, and that's miles faster than we've seen any of the Williams go this weekend. So Gerhard's prophecy that they had somewhat more in their pockets looks to be very much correct, as Ralf Schumacher heads up the hill to Kampsa. And again, no dramas really, as he cuts the timing beam at the end of this straight. It's another fastest sector. This is going to be buried well into the 1 minute 17s. Williams really showing us something spectacular. And what was his quickest? A 19.3. He's going to go 1.5 seconds faster than any other Williams lap this weekend so far.
Maybe more, maybe more. Out of the last corner he comes then, Ralf Schumacher. What are we going to get from him? It's a 1:17.355, a stunning lap from Williams. And once again, they've done what they did last year, haven't they? Started slowly through the Friday, not really been at the races, and then got stronger as the weekend came on. Montoya, I remind you, was second here last year after a very poor Friday. But our first sight now of the Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello.
And he's much faster again. He's about 2 to 3 tenths up. We haven't seen the split times, but Barrichello, I think, is about to snatch away. Oh, plenty of tail end out through 12. You don't often see that and get away with it. Over the line he goes. That is Montoya looking for his spare car as Barrichello breaks into the 1:16s, a 16.933. The track really is giving plenty of grip. It's not too hot today. It's absolutely on the sweet spot for a cracking lap time, and that is a cracking lap time. A 16.9 will take some beating. We haven't seen Michael Schumacher yet, of course.
Well, Montoya had been out. He'd done a single lap, and then the car seems to have failed on the pit lane entry. The mechanics are pushing it down the pit lane at the moment. That's why you saw Montoya running down from the entry of the pit lane down towards his garage to get into the spare car, so not what he wanted at all.
Looking down then into the pit lane, Michael Schumacher cruising out on the speed limiter, heading out for his first attempt of the afternoon. I'm sure the Bridgestone runners will hope to get the job done with just 3 runs today, maybe even 2 if you get a cracking lap in. There's half an hour to go. This session is 50% complete, and Michael Schumacher goes out for his first run.
Giancarlo Fisichella currently in 6th place then for Jordan. How badly could they do with some good news this weekend? Almost 50 people laid off during the week, including some very senior management people. Trevor Foster, the managing director. David Brown, one of the most experienced race engineers in Formula 1, who engineered Nigel Mansell and Alain Prost to World Championships. He was shown the door as well. Fisichella said yesterday, just one good result would help to wipe away all the disappointment we've had so far this season, and they desperately need it, don't they?
And yes, Fisichella then from 6th place on his 1:18.8 sweeps into the pit lane. He's got to be grimacing a bit, hasn't he? He swapped with Trulli. Trulli went to Renault, and Renault's flying. Fisichella went back to Jordan. I admire Eddie Jordan for coming in our studio today and facing the music. He's obviously had some tough decisions, and he's saying, I've got to keep the team going. The only problem that worries me about this Jordan scenario is, what is it telling the great engineers, the great drivers, or the big sponsors of the future? You know, the message is quite difficult there, but Eddie says needs must, and well, that was a tough one.
Michael Schumacher out on track to respond to the amazing first flying lap of Rubens Barrichello, and just as in Imola 2 weeks ago, Barrichello has thrown down the gauntlet to his teammate. Can Schumacher respond? He starts his first flying lap of the afternoon. This, the new 2002 Ferrari. It's the 3rd time that Schumacher's had it at a Grand Prix, only the 2nd time that Rubens Barrichello's had his hands on it. And Martin was saying the sheer speed, the way this car comes out of the corners, the way it changes directions, utterly stunning.
Massa goes 4th while you're watching this, and Michael Schumacher is slower down to the first sector. Quite a bit slower, really. Let's see what he can do now through the middle part of the lap. And it's really reminiscent, isn't it, of the last Grand Prix in Imola, where Barrichello looked like he got the pace, and Schumacher pulled, I think, everything out of the box that he possesses to snatch pole position in Imola last time out, because Barrichello seemed to have more fundamental speed. I wonder if it's the same this afternoon. It looks like it. That's a 1/4 second deficit now.
Well, the man they're all calling the best in the world, one of the greatest ever, and he's being kept honest by his teammate. We haven't seen this too much, have we, over the years with Michael Schumacher? We're certainly seeing it now. Look at that. I love the way that car comes out of that corner. That is great. I mean, that's worth travelling all the way out here to see that.
Imagine what it's like inside it. Goes 2nd then. Still maintaining that 1/4 second deficit, so an all-Ferrari front row at the moment. Raikkonen pops it up into 4th place with a 17.7, pushing Coulthard down to 5th, Irvine's 13th, and we've yet to see Jenson Button.
Yes, inside the final half hour of the qualifying, as we look again at Pedro de la Rosa. Currently in 14th place for Jaguar, 1 spot behind his teammate. Rubens Barrichello on provisional pole, ahead of Michael Schumacher, then Ralf Schumacher 3rd, Kimi Raikkonen 4th, Coulthard 5th, Massa 6th, Heidfeld 7th for Sauber. The 2 Saubers going strongly as promised, but not quite on the pace of the 2 McLarens, but they have got the Renaults behind them, so that's some scalps indeed. And Fisichella showing that the Bridgestones really do have the upper hand. He's 8th. De La Rosa pops up to 9th place. And 10th Bonaldi, and down at Renault we have Tate Kravitz.
No problems for Jenson Button, James. He's just been sitting in the car taking it easy, watching this great action out on track. Although as we speak, the front covers are coming off the wings. Yep, the fuel pipes are coming out of the car. He'll be going out very shortly.
Well, that's calm confidence for you. 26 minutes remaining of this 1 hour session. Oh, and Alain McNish is going to do well to keep that out of the wall. Just scrapes along it. Ran wide in 12, lost the back end of the car. You've got no chance there. No amount of downforce or traction control will save that situation. And now he's pointing the wrong way, of course, on the super high speed part of the racetrack and the pit lane entry we talked about in our track guide. And nice little pirouette there and into the pit lane. So obviously that trashed his lap.
That was skillfully done by Alain McNish. His recovery from that. I think a lot of people would have just sat there thinking, I can't try this. I'm not going to try this. Here's the spin.
Yeah, he was well off line, wasn't he? He'd gone across the grass and into the gravel trap. No chance of recovering that. Yeah, he's lost it. There's marbles up high there. Once you get up there, you're way past the point of no return. and lucky really that wasn't a much bigger impact. While all that was going on, Montoya's completed his first lap in the presumably either repaired car or the spare car, but he's a full second slower than his teammate Ralf Schumacher, and he's down in 8th. So Montoya not having a great qualifying session at this time. Coulthard is back out on track, and we're watching Heidfeld, who I think is about to take Coulthard's 5th position away.
Yes, Heidfeld attacking. McNish is in the race. He's 17th at the moment. That was his second attempt. Lovely exit from 12 from Heidfeld, and sweeping into 13 imperiously goes the Sauber. This thing is going like a rocket this weekend. Stays 6th. Very, very close. Very, very close. Coulthard 1:18.006. Heidfeld 1:18.012. 6 1,000ths of a second behind a McLaren. Not a bad effort at all.
A McLaren he probably felt he should be sitting in, of course. He's the protege of Mercedes-Benz, and he was bypassed for Kimi Raikkonen. But I think young Heidfeld's doing a great job leading the Sauber team. It's all very well being fast, you've got to be able to lead a team as well, especially in the position he's in. He's doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, still only a very young man, Nick Heidfeld. And he's doing a terrific job with an even younger teammate alongside him, as we're looking now at David Coulthard. He's had a little bit of a wake-up call for the Sauber. Seems to be going quite slowly at the moment on the wind up to this lap.
I think he's trying to make some space. He'll know that there's a car in front of him. There's certainly, it looked like a Ferrari looming up behind him. But now he wants to make sure he starts that lap with as much space as possible, except your tyres and your brakes get a little bit chilly when you do that, and it tends to be nasty when you get down to turn 1. Although there's lots and lots of grip, hopefully he'll get away with it. And watch him sweeping to that first apex. Car looking quite sorted at this stage, looking well balanced, really not fighting the wheel at all, is he?
No, a real struggle for him in Imola 2 weeks ago. What can he do on sector 1? 0.3 of a second. You can see the difference between the McLaren and Ferrari around this racetrack.
Well, that's still his personal best down to turn 4. Oh, and he's locked a wheel and run wide in 5. That'll cost him a 10th or 2. So a scruffy early part of the middle sector for Coulthard, and let's hope he can make that up on the rest of it, using all of the track once again like he did on his first run. And he's also had a wake-up call not only from the Saubers, but teammate Raikkonen has just popped in front of him in 4th, and it's a personal best middle sector as well for him. But at the moment it's nip and tuck whether he'll pass Raikkonen for 4th. But he's certainly not going to make the top 3 at this stage.
No, and they've all had a wake-up call from Williams, because Ralf Schumacher, from seemingly nowhere, managed to pop in a 1:17.355. Juan Montoya, though, still in the pits and in trouble. Coulthard stays 4th. No, goes 4th. He jumps ahead of Raikkonen.
Yes, he does. He pipped him by half a tenth. So they're squabbling over 4th and 5th, but they're still some 0.3 away from breaking into the top 3, and that's a lot. Yeah, I think the lap of the afternoon so far, it's nip and tuck between Barrichello's 16.9, which is a stunner, and Ralf Schumacher's out of nowhere 1:17.3.
And Jenson Button goes 6th. Button in the Renault on his first flying lap, cool as a cucumber. He waited 40 minutes of the session to do it, but Jenson Button goes up into 6th place. Terrific effort. So 20 minutes to go, a lot of excitement, as well as Jenson Button, we ride on board with him on his slowing down lap. And Rubens Barrichello has really put a cat amongst the pigeons here at Barcelona. He's inside the 1:17 bracket. Michael Schumacher is 0.2 slower than himself. Ralf Schumacher's 3rd, Coulthard is 4th, Raikkonen is 5th, and this man here, Jenson Button, well, he's 6th. 19 minutes left in the qualifying session here in Barcelona, and guess what? Rubens Barrichello is at it again. He's pushing the margin even further away from his teammate Michael Schumacher. Barrichello a 10th up on what is already a provisional pole position slot for himself. The Brazilian is on fire here in Barcelona.
It's great when you've got a cracking lap time already in the bag, because you can get a bit adventurous. He went very, very wide in Kampsa, but you can afford to hang it out a little bit more in the certain knowledge that you've got one in the bag already. And he lost time on the way into Kampsa. We saw it kick up the dust a little bit, and that's a shame, because this was going to be a stunner. This was going to be well into the 1:16s, but let's see what it turns out as he goes through 12 and 13. He really is hanging out, isn't he? He wants to be careful now, but he knows he's got a great time up on the board, and it's a 17.0, so it wasn't bad, but he's still got a quarter of a second left there, yeah.
Yeah, he lost 0.3 of a second just in that middle sector alone with that little mistake, which would have taken him quite a bit further into the 1:16. So Michael Schumacher, to be safe of pole position, has got to be looking at something around a 16.6 if he's going to get pole off Rubens Barrichello. He did it in the final minute of qualifying in Imola 2 weeks ago, where we're going to have another showdown here in Barcelona.
He wants to be careful, he needs to padlock himself in. Michael will steal that car again for tomorrow,
Yes.
like he did in Imola.
Indeed. We saw for race day Michael Schumacher taking Rubens Barrichello's chassis, the one that he'd been so fast in qualifying the day before, and I thought that was really very odd indeed. But there we go, that's the politics of Ferrari. Eddie Irvine, though, well, 15th for Jaguar at the moment, 2 places below his teammate Pedro de la Rosa, and that's the man he's got to watch out for right there. De la Rosa at the moment faster on the first sector than he has been before, not challenging the Ferraris today, but solidly up there in 13th place, De La Rosa, as we ride on board with him.
It's quite an interesting shot, except for right-handers. You can't see anything, unfortunately, with this over-the-shoulder number. But unfortunately, there's only 2 right-handers left of this lap. But nonetheless, you can see the tremendous speed. He can just sweep into that corner. He's not working too hard on the wheel. The Jaguar looking better balanced than it has done for some time. Unfortunately, it's still 2 seconds a lap off the pace. There's some nice little aerodynamic details along the top of his head protection there, and the mirror bobbing up and down a bit at high speed. But that's not too bad. But I have to say, James, the changes they're making at Jaguar, Richard Parry-Jones coming in, and some other key elements, for the first time I'm beginning to feel they might just get their act together.
Yes, you definitely get that impression talking with Gunther Steiner, who's running the engineering operation there. They've hired new engineers, as Mika Salo runs around in 14th place, an improvement for him to a 1:18.897 for Toyota. But going back to Jaguar, Richard Parry-Jones, a very influential figure within the Ford Motor Company, now on the main board, and a big fan of everything that has to do with sport, and particularly Formula One. Wolfgang Reitzler, who was the president of Jaguar and the Premier Automotive Group, he left last week, and in a funny sort of way, it's actually strengthened Jaguar's position. They've got the board behind them, and 2 highly rated new aerodynamicists have joined the team. And the wind tunnel now in operation, you just start to sense that Jaguar are pointing in the right direction. Juan Montoya has just gone out on track, and Louise can tell us something about him.
Well, still no official word from the team on what the problem was with the race car. They're being quite coy about it. They've had the engine covers off. There's quite a lot of activity amongst the BMW people, though, so my guess is that it's an engine problem rather than a car problem. On the T car, there's been quite a lot of activity amongst the mechanics. Looked like a fairly substantial setup change was going on. He's got about a second to find on his teammates, so they've made those changes now. As you say, Montoya's just taken to the track. Let's see what he can do with it.
Only 15 minutes remaining. Montoya down in 10th place. Teammate Ralf Schumacher in 3rd. As Louise said, he's got about a second to find. And quite clearly, on the first run in that spare car, he was not comfortable. It was a very steady lap indeed. Not many changes going on out there at the moment. McNish is on a better lap. He's down in 20th at this time, as Michael Schumacher is into the first sector of his second attempt of the afternoon.
He managed a 1:17.190 last time. He's going to need something in the low 22-second bracket in his first sector. He's not done it. Almost identical time to the one he set in Sector 1 on his first lap, and it's not enough for Michael Schumacher.
But remember, Rubens got it wrong up at Campsa corner. 2 or 3 corners down the road from here. Rubens ran wide on the way in, had a bit of traffic, I think was slightly unsighted. So Michael still has got a chance of making the difference through the rest of this lap. Don't count him out just yet, and we'll find, oh, he was seriously on the ragged edge there. He's going to cut the beam anytime soon, and no, he's lost a third of a second.
But the track is getting faster. Mark Webber has improved. Kimi Raikkonen is on a lap at the moment, which is certainly going to be an improvement for him. So it's not the racetrack that's getting slower. At the moment, Michael Schumacher not able to find the sweet spot of this new 2002 Ferrari, quite like his teammate Rubens Barrichello has been able to do. And what a turn up for the books this is, isn't it? What does Schumacher manage? A 17.222. Well, Williams, McLaren, they'd dearly love to be able to do a lap at that sort of speed, but Michael, he needs a lot more.
Raikkonen has just moved up to 4th place, passing teammate Coulthard by a couple of hundredths of a second. So McLaren 4th and 5th at the moment, and really almost having their own squabble, with Jenson Button threatening just behind them in 6th place. But Button has still only done one run and has just left the pits for his 2nd attempt of the qualifying session. So that's very close as ever then between McLaren and Renault, and Raikkonen is on the reconnaissance lap back into the pits.
Yes, so far with 12 minutes left of this session, everyone is safely within the 107% rule. Alex Young is the slowest qualifier at the moment in the European Minardi, and he is well and truly in. He's about 7/10 of a second inside 107%. So we should have 22 cars on the track tomorrow, as Ferrari and McLaren on their in laps. Michael Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen on their way back into the pits, probably for one more run this afternoon.
Arrows are 10th and 13th. I think we probably expected them to be a little bit more competitive than that, didn't we? After their practice runs, where they were clearly running a little bit less fuel than some cars. But nonetheless, I'm sure they'll be happy if Frentzen stays in the top 10.
Yes, and the other story we flagged up at the top is the Saubers, with this supposed qualifying engine they have from Ferrari, which is working for them. Nick Heidfeld at the moment is 7th fastest, a 1:18.012, and he's very close indeed to the back of Jenson Button, and not too far away from David Coulthard either. And Felipe Massa is right there as well, just a 10th behind his teammate Felipe Massa, also in the top 10. But the man who has question marks over his head at the moment is definitely Juan Montoya. Had some kind of problem with his race car, to do with the engine, we believe. He's currently 8th at the moment, and we've got a bit of wing out on the track.
I think somebody's bumped along the grass and lost their front wing. It's too early in the corner for it just to have fallen off, I would guesstimate, but that is laying in the middle of the grid. We don't know whose wing it is at the moment, and it's another Minardi wing by the looks of it, but it's going to have been taken off on the curb. And look at the angle of attack that car had just after the wing came off. But you'd have to say, as they red flagged the session has been stopped to he's running wide, look, bounces across the curb. Well, cause or effect, James? Not absolutely sure on that one. He had a huge amount of understeer on the way into the corner, and you really wonder whether it came off on the curb or made the car fly because it came off first.
Well, I think both the drivers, the team and the FIA will want to know the answer to that question as well, because that's exactly what Webber's incident looked like this morning, except Webber's was actually on the track. He wasn't off on the rumble strips. It just blew off as he was going down a straight line, whereas Young, it's 50-50. We saw Michael Schumacher do a similar thing at the Hungarian Grand Prix a few years ago. Do you recall? He ran wide in the final corner, knocked his front wing off, and had to run back and get a new wing during the race. It was a similar looking incident, but certainly a lot of concern, I would say, in the Minardi camp about why these front wings keep breaking off.
Yeah, that's, as I said earlier on in the programme, that's one of the big 3 no-nos when you're driving a Formula 1 car. The stuck throttle, the brake failure and the front wing coming off. But I'd need to see a good replay of that to be sure, as I said, whether that was cause or effect.
Let me ask you, when things like that happen, you have a complete brake failure, or you have a front wing come off when you're at high speed, you have those kind of accidents. Does it undermine your confidence? Or are you able to go out next time and attack exactly the same way as you would before? Or is there a little bit of you that just says, hang on a second, I'm not sure if I trust this car?
If you start looking around it and second guessing the designers or the mechanics, forget it. Don't even step over the side of the cockpit. Of course it erodes your confidence. You can't have a 170 mile an hour incident on the exit of one of the fastest corners in the world and have the car looking like it's going to be Concorde for a moment or two, heading up into the sky, and or a Cessna 152 even that we're looking at the moment. It's going to erode your confidence, but of course you just get back in and believe it's not going to happen again. Otherwise, pack up and go home and hand in your racing license. But we really would I'd like to see a close-up replay. If they'll give us that, if the Spanish director will dig one of those out for us, because we'll have to see. But it is quite bumpy. He dropped his 2 left-hand wheels, the 2 loaded wheels on the outside of the track. They're off the curb, on the other side of the grass. So, you know, the ride height of the cars at that speed is so small, probably 10 millimetres above the ground. The wing's a little bit higher than that, but it can be quite easy just to break those front stanchions. Ted, what can you say?
Martin Minardi have now put the garage door down in front of Alex Young's car, so I think it's pretty safe to say that he won't be going out again. I did manage to sneak a look at the front wing and the nose before he came in. It had just sheared off, it had just purely broken off. And I tell you where it had done, it was just below where the nose meets those two little uprights that connect the nose to the front wing. That's where it had broken clean off. But it looks like Minardi aren't going to send either of their cars back out again today if they think their front wings are going to fall off.
Well, they certainly can't from a safety point of view, of course. And we're watching a replay of McNish's earlier spin coming out of 12 and arriving backwards into 13. But that is where the wings break anyway. Remember Montoya just tagging the back of Michael Schumacher's car in Brazil. That's exactly what happened. Those two uprights of the front wing, that's where it's always going to break. But you'd have to, if you were putting money on it, you'd have to say that's another front wing failure, I'm afraid.
Qualifying will restart at 13.53. It's now 13.52 and 41 seconds, so about 20 seconds away from the green flag again. They've cleared away the debris from the racetrack, and it's reminiscent of a couple of years ago with the Sauber team. Do you remember they had a series of rear wing failures that culminated them actually withdrawing the cars from qualifying, I believe at the Brazilian Grand Prix, after Pedro Diniz had a very, very scary moment where his rear wing flew off.
Yeah, absolutely right. So they freeze the time of the qualifying session until the pit lane is open again. You've now seen the clock ticking down again, and here we go then. Let's have another look. I think that's a front wing failure. I think it should have withstood that grazing along the ground it was obviously getting. It wasn't as straightforward as the one that fell off on the straight this morning, but it should have been able to take that little exciting moment that he was in the middle of that became somewhat more exciting a few nanoseconds later.
Well, that unfortunate and slightly scary diversion shouldn't take our eyes off the ball of what's actually happening on the track in the battle, not only for pole, for the front row of the grid, but also the battle behind between Williams, McLaren and Renault. Jenson Button in the Renault is still very close indeed to the two McLarens, just 0.2 of a second behind Raikkonen in fourth place and a 10th behind Coulthard in fifth. So it's all to play for there between McLaren and Renault. And Montoya, can he get himself up onto the front 2 or 3 rows of the grid? And can Giancarlo Fisichella, who's now slipped down to 11th in the Jordan because Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 10th in the Arrows, can Fisichella get back into the top 10? Here he is.
Here he is indeed. The man who he replaced, Trulli, who went to Renault, is the underperformer of the day. He's down in 20th place, is Jarno Trulli. Some 14 places and 1.4 seconds slower than teammate Jenson Button. Trulli having a nightmare afternoon. Fisichella, as you said, James, just popping outside the top 10 at this time. 11th, 1:18.610, and he is not faster in terms of his personal bests into the Sector 1 timing zone. So Fisichella struggling then. Heidfeldt's on a quick lap behind him, a quicker lap anyway. Let's watch Fisichella through turns 6 and 7. Doesn't look super committed, does he? He doesn't seem like he's got a bundle of confidence, although that turned in nicely there to Kamsa. But Fisichella not really on or even close to the ragged edge, and that's where you see the difference.
It's interesting, isn't it, that we were talking about the Bridgestone tyres going into this session being the ones to be on, but in fact, as it's played out, Michelin have managed to get themselves solidly in the top 10. The Williamses, the McLarens, and one certainly of the Renaults well up there. Only the Saubers of the smaller teams making the Bridgestones look clever on any other car than a Ferrari, as Fisichella stays 11th. So with just over 8 minutes to go, Rubens Barrichello still on pole. Can he stay there? A tantalising prospect. We've been here before, haven't we? 2 weeks ago, and in the final minute, Michael Schumacher came along and nicked it, but Rubens Barrichello still on pole provisionally, ahead of Michael Schumacher. Then it's Ralf Schumacher 3rd, Raikkonen 4th, Coulthard 5th, Button still 6th, Heidfeld 7th, Montoya down in 8th, still hoping to get himself up there. And the front few rows, Massa 9th and Frentzen in 10th place.
Barrichello has 4 pole positions to his credit, I'd love to see him make it 5 this afternoon. That would be poetic justice, I think, because he really has been the faster driver in the Ferrari team this weekend.
Yes, and interestingly, Jean Todt, that runs the Ferrari team, was saying this weekend, he was kind of letting it out that Barrichello is expected to be confirmed for next year in the second seat. As we look at Heinz-Harald Frentzen, currently running in 10th place. This is not a bad lap by Frentzen. His middle sector was better than he's managed before, but he doesn't improve his position, even though he does improve his lap time, 1:18.223. And that's just over a second slower than Michael Schumacher in second place, and about 1.3 seconds off Rubens Barrichello's provisional pole slot. There's Frentzen.
Nice super slow-mo replay there, and you can get a bit better view then of the aerodynamics underneath the front of the car that seem to be working so well here in Barcelona. Frentzen remains in the top 10. A tenth of a second would move him nicely up to 8th place, so he's got a chance, hasn't he? Frentzen can have, I believe, one more go. He's got a lap back. He was out on the track when the red flags were waving, so Frentzen does have enough laps left for another attempt. 6 minutes and 30 seconds remaining of this session, and Louise is at Ferrari.
I am just keeping a watch on proceedings here. Michael Schumacher just strapped himself back into his race car. He got out of the car when he came in at the end of that last run, went through to the back of the garage. Now, I think he went there to have a look at the telemetry. You very often see the drivers sat in the car going through bits of paper with their engineers, but it appears he's actually got out, gone through to the back of the garage, so he can have a really in-depth look at what's going on. The team have made a few small changes to the front wing and to the rear wing. He's just about to go out in the car again, so let's see how he gets on.
Yes, and Barrichello has already taken to the track in the sister Ferrari for his final attempt of the afternoon. You're watching the Toyota of Salo about to start his hot lap, and as Louise predicted, Michael Schumacher takes to the track. It's going to be quite busy, but not so many cars that have a lap allocation left available to them. I think about 10 or 11 of them are going to be on the track anytime soon.
Well, 6 of them are out at the moment as Barrichello comes around, trying to find a bit of a gap in the traffic in which to give himself some room. He's got a Jordan in front of him. Barrichello looking for the space to put in a flying lap. His previous second lap, he was well up in the first sector, but his middle sector, he messed it up in one of the corners. So we believe that there is more speed in this Ferrari. We think he can do a 16.6, maybe even a 16.7 with this car. And Barrichello really got the bit between his teeth.
Yeah, he was looking a bit scary there, wasn't he? A little bit scruffy last time around. If he can just tame that down a little bit, I agree with you. There's a 16.6, 16.7 somewhere in that car. But if it's true to form from Imola, it'll be Michael that finds it somehow out of nowhere. But Rubens then en route. The lap has started, and he's heading down to turn 1, 190 down to 70, and it just looks supremely glued to the racetrack, that car, doesn't it? Yet to be beaten in a Grand Prix, the 2002 Ferrari car, and he's going to break the timing beam. He did a 22.22 last time, and look, wonderful first sector for Rubens Barrichello. Good positioning on the track through 4, easy then over to the right for turns 5, just snatches that left front, came off the brake pedal nicely and got away with it. This time it's going well, but it's just at the top of this next hill where he made a mistake last time, ran in a little bit wide, unsighted with traffic. No problem this time around. Senna really fully and totally committed on the throttle pedal, and he heads then down to the hairpin, and look at that. He is heading for that late 1:16 that we predicted, providing he doesn't get too leery through turns 12 and 13. Just a touch wide there, but I think he'll get away with that one too. And just watch the incredible direction change as he turns into the last corner. That is total blind faith as you lean on the steering wheel. This is going to be a brilliant lap. There it is. Well deserved from Barrichello, but Schumacher is trying to respond as we speak.
Indeed he has. He set the fastest first sector time, Michael Schumacher. And with 3 minutes left of this qualifying out, are we going to see a repeat of what happened 2 weeks ago in Imola? There is Schumacher on the attack, up through 7 and 8. What's his middle sector been like as he sweeps into that corner, up onto the back straightaway? We wait to see him cut the clock. And he's still nearly 2 tenths up on Rubens Barrichello. He's going to do him again in the final moments of qualifying. Just 2 more corners to go for Michael Schumacher, and Rubens Barrichello is following this. His radio will be telling him what Michael Schumacher is doing, and his heart will be sinking and breaking because Michael is going to do him again. Final 2 corners then now, across the start-finish line, and it's pole position for Michael Schumacher. A stunning lap, 0.3 of a second faster than Rubens Barrichello. It came from nowhere. He'd been struggling on his first 2 runs, but Michael Schumacher, a 1:16.364. The rest of the teams read it and weep.
Absolutely. I think certainly in the 3-litre era of Formula 1, that is the fastest ever lap around this racetrack, including qualifying and including test sessions as well through the winter.
Not only that, it's almost 2 seconds faster than qualifying last year's pole. 2 seconds.
Sensational. Once again, then Michael Schumacher just digs very, very deep and has reserves. Poor old Rubens Barrichello. Got to suffer that one again. Heidfeld is on a decent lap here. Can he launch past Button, Coulthard and co? No, he can't. By a 1/10 of a second, he remains 7th. Out on the track then. 3rd place man, Ralf Schumacher. 4th, Kimi Räikkönen. And 5th, Coulthard. 6th, Button. They're all out there to have another run. We have 13 cars on track.
And a 1.5 minutes left of the session as we see Nick Heidfeld hammering the curbs in the Sauber. Heidfeld in 7th place, but the man who has really failed to deliver this afternoon is Juan Montoya. He's in 8th place at the moment in the Williams, and his final run isn't going to be good enough.
No, but he's also, don't forget, in the spare car, so he has had dramas. But, we'll have to wait and see if he can improve on 8th place. Slow-mo replay there of Barrichello's lap just a few minutes ago, but he now resides in 2nd place on the grid.
Montoya, in fact, only qualified 12th here last year, so there's something about this track and qualifying just doesn't seem to work for Montoya. You're looking at him now, and this is not going to do much for his grid situation. No, he stays in 8th place. Michael Schumacher on pole, ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Ralf is 3rd at the moment, Räikkönen 4th. 5th is Coulthard, 6th is Button, 7th Heidfeld, 8th Montoya, 9th Felipe Massa, and 10th Frentzen as we ride on board with Kimi Räikkönen, half a second down on that Ferrari pole time.
I think Ferrari must be easily flat out through turn 3, which is highly unusual, but to find half a second in a 22.5 second sector is something else. But stay on board then, and the nose goes nicely into 6, uses the concrete rumble strips of 7. This is Kampser, and he has the confidence to just nail the throttle, but the delay was quite a lot, and Räikkönen has not had a tremendous lap at all.
And Jenson Button is faster in Sector 1 than Räikkönen has been. Is Button going to get in amongst the McLarens here in the dying seconds of qualifying here in Barcelona? We're riding with Kimi Räikkönen, but very much in his rear-view mirrors and in his thoughts will be Jenson Button and the Renault. His middle sector's been good too, so Button the man to watch. He's improving, so too is Ralf Schumacher possibly. Montoya having a slightly better lap than he did the lap before as well, so chances of some changes in the grid slots at the moment. Button goes 5th, ahead of Coulthard, so he splits the McLarens. Great lap, we didn't see it, but a terrific lap by Jenson Button. Ralf Schumacher, he improves as well, but not enough to get himself off the 2nd row of the grid. And Montoya pops up onto the outside of row 2, right in the final moments.
Yes, the qualifying session has finished, and Montoya pulls one out of the bag. Coulthard does not go faster and slips down to 7th then, with Montoya's improvement up to 4th. Jarno Trulli pulls one out of the bag too in the final seconds, up into 9th place. So Michael Schumacher, Barrichello, Ralf Schumacher 3rd, Montoya 4th, Räikkönen 5th, Button 6th, Coulthard 7th, Heidfeld 8th, Trulli 9th, and Frentzen stays in the top 10 for Arrows.
A lot of changes then in the closing stage of that session, not just at the front of the grid, but right the way through it. Just goes to show that in this sport, you can't take anything for granted. Well, there's Michael Schumacher. He's got his 46th pole position of his career. And tomorrow, he will be looking for his 57th Grand Prix victory. His teammate will have something to say about that. The Williams drivers will have something to say about that as well. But at the moment, he's standing on top of the world.
That is absolutely right. We are seeing red in Spain. Great late effort. Look at that. Jenson Button up in 6th place, and we'll be completing our coverage of the qualifying session when you rejoin us. Let's just confirm confirm how they're going to line up tomorrow at the Spanish Grand Prix at the Circuit de Catalunya, close to Barcelona. Schumacher and Barrichello up front, but look at that, Jenson Button getting ahead of David Coulthard. Eddie Irvine starts 15th, and McNish, who had that spin in the Toyota, will start 20th. But Tony, we wondered about Williams beforehand, and I mean, where did Ralf Schumacher find that time from?
Well, they had something up their sleeve, as Gerhard Berger said, but it's mainly the fact that they were really just doing race running all the time, running very heavy fuel loads. We know they were running about 60 kilos on Friday. But this is also what Ferrari did potentially to Williams BMW in Brazil. It was a little bit of a bluff, really. Let's wait and see. We won't show our hand till the last. So he got provisional pole. Out comes Ruben Barrichello, looking a bit ragged there for a moment, but then his lovely smooth style, 16.9. Great time there, and he was sitting on provisional pole for quite a while.
What was that Eddie Irvine once said about being Michael Schumacher's teammate? It's like being battered over the head with a cricket bat all weekend, and right at the end, OK, Michael, brandishing the bat, really.
Yeah, but, you know, Michael knows what he's doing. He's making constant changes all the time, because Ruben's going out again right towards the end in the last 4 minutes there, and manages, look, right across the line, manages to improve yet again. And we think that, you know, he's clinched this pole position, could have been the 5th of his career. No, Red Baron comes out. Maybe he'd been suffering from the wind earlier in the session, because you have this headwind down the straight. We don't know, but he's certainly making adjustments all the time, just like he did at Imola. And then right at the moment, he comes out. That's mine.
Final word from you about Jenson Button. Really hopeful for tomorrow.
Well, cool, calm, calculated, showing tremendous confidence, not just in the car, but himself, doing so few runs like that. And coming up, went into 5th place, but Montoya just pipped him and pushed him down to 6th at the end. Great stuff from Jenson
Possible
Button.
first podium for him, do you think?
Could be on the cards, and he's just ahead of Coulthard. Coulthard will not like that. The best Brit is Button.
OK, thank you, Tony. Our pre-race show starts at 12:10 tomorrow. Marc Genet, Williams' Spanish test driver, he'll be with us in the studio, and we will hear from that super confident fella, Jenson Button. Now, if you think we might be in for a low-key afternoon, forget it. Remember what happened to Mika Häkkinen on the very last lap last year. Bye-bye.
This is the man, Mika Häkkinen. If he can just do this last 2.5 miles or so, he is going to have won this race 4 years in succession.
He's slowing down, Murray. I thought I heard it rattling as it came past the pits last time.
Bang, the engine's gone, and on the very last lap of the Spanish Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher looks as though he's going to go through and take another win. Wow, my goodness, an incredible finish.
If you'd like to know more about Formula One, the website address sponsored by Toyota is itv.com/F1.